Hey guys, I'm Rick, and that is One Big Pile of Bricks, filming on location at Brickvention 2023. Is that right, Dan? With our amazing guest, Lewis from Built Bricks. Hey! Hello, Lewis.
G'day, how's it going?
Pretty good. How's things?
Mate, busy. This event has been huge.
Well, you're a very popular man.
Oh, I think it's just the size of the display gets people in from a distance, and they just want to see all of the things that are going on. You know, it's very colourful.
It is. It's awesome, man. All the lightsabers and stuff you got over there.
Full rainbow at this point. Only a couple of colours. Like, I want something orange, maybe a bit more blue in the whole thing. It's very red and green focused around everything. But
so let's talk about your history with Lego.
Yes.
And how we sort of met, if you remember.
Yeah. I mean, I've been building with Lego since I was a little tacker. 5 years old. I still remember the first sets.
And now you're 16 and you just got a full beard.
I'm 16, full beard. Yeah, add another decade onto that. We're a bit closer. But I started with Bionicle.
Wow, cool.
So I had the Toa, so that new gift with purchase is coming out. It's kind of close to my heart. And just a tub of bricks, like assorted bricks.
Wow.
Which I think I still have the tub. Like putting stuff in. Building just for fun. When I was younger, I liked to try and tinker with sets more than complete mock building or reverse engineer. Like go online, look at what people are doing and just try and figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, young, I think I was 21 at the time when the LEGOland in Chadstone did its Brick Factor.
Yeah.
I was in uni and just thought, let's give it a run.
Shout out to Dave Holder.
Yeah, shout out to Dave Holder who beat me in the Brick Factor.
Oh, sorry.
No, he did well. No, it was fantastic. So that experience, I wasn't really involved in the Lego community. I grew up in regional Victoria.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't really common to go to any events. Like I did it really just for myself. And I dabbled a bit in like Flickr back in the day.
Yeah, Flickr was massive for
Lego it was huge. I've still found the old account password the other day and some of the stuff on there.
Young generations, it's like Instagram but better.
Yeah. There was like community pages. And instead of hashtags, you had like groups you'd post your stuff into. Like, is it Space Mocks? Is it Star Wars? Is it Ships? But I found the account the other day. I found all these old builds.
Seriously, did you manage to log her in?
Yeah, and same as the old Brick Shelf website, which had even earlier stuff than that. There's some real dodgy stuff on there.
How do you feel about the way the Lego community has changed?
I think it's grown in terms of not just being like a niche. It's not a niche anymore.
It's kind of acceptable now? It's
acceptable. I mean, you know, growing up through high school in a rural area, being a wheedly little nerd who loved this kind of stuff, you cop a bit of flack for it back in the day.
Yeah, you do.
And, my partner has this little running joke where she goes, if we were in school together, I probably would have bullied you.
Yeah.
But now...
That's generally how it is, right?
But now it's sort of... We've had a shift. And I think a lot of these things that maybe were considered childish, people are really understanding that this brings people joy. There's a reason that nostalgia is so popular. And Lego's been around for so long. Like, you know, what is it? Around the 60s, 40s?
1932.
32. So, you know, we're nearly coming up on 100 years of Lego. And I think what we're seeing is people are really understanding the value of it, not just for making even mocks. It's therapeutic.
Yeah.
It's fun. It takes your mind off. It lets you think of things in creative ways. And that's something I think I found with this community. It's grown in terms of there's people who aren't just your intense mock builders. You've got entry level. You've got people who just build sets, but that's what they're happy to do. And then you've got people like the ship just behind us here.
Dude, that's
like a 7 meter long, $50,000
I have to introduce myself because I want to like get him in a podcast and we can talk about it. Then Dan can do his movie magic. Yeah,
it's fascinating. Oh, but you were mentioning like where I sort of started. The Legoland was really where I started doing big stuff and more
Millennium
complex
Falcon
stuff. Yeah, the Millennium Falcon. That's was a 250,000 piece build.
Massive.
That was a 10-day build that we knocked out in 4, and then management said, no, we budget 10 days. You got to take half of it apart.
Really?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing was it was meant to be interactive.
It was maybe for people, right? They could build a brick and put it on, right?
So we ended up sort of disassembling some of it as we were rebuilding other parts. Wow. But the whole idea was, you know, people wanted to see it under construction.
Yeah.
We just finished it faster than we thought.
Times were different back then. Legoland was allowed to have Star Wars.
Yeah, it was. I think that might have been the first outside of a Lego theme thing that we worked on.
So with the Legoland, do you think that's what trained you to be a better builder?
Yes. Really what that was not just about mocks, it's about perspective.
Yeah.
A lot of these mocks that are really, really intricate and fun to make, when you're trying to do something for a public setting or an exhibition, there's a balance between detail and size.
Yeah.
And some things that are hyper detailed are great to show off, but they don't necessarily draw in eyes. So Legoland taught us about life-size sculptures.
Yeah,
I did things like upscaling the minifig chest to a life-size chest, post boxes, and a lot of stuff that I did was life-size replicas.
Wow.
So like I did an AFL footy, which I think is still there.
Wow.
And, like,
It'll
a
be still
Melbourne-
on the shelf, right, in the build area. Yeah.
It's one of the ones, it's like 50 layers of plate. That thing is
Yeah. It'd be
not-
heavy.
Yeah,
It'd
it's
be a
bit dense.
projectile.
Yeah, I'm trying to redo it now to actually not have that many layers of plates.
Yeah.
But it was all that life-size replicas, and I felt like I developed a bit of a knack for looking at a picture and figuring out what I needed to use to make that happen.
Yeah. So how have you found the transition? Let me get that right. We got there and then transition from, you know, being at LEGOland to now working with Brickbuilds, which is one of the most amazing companies on the planet.
Oh, and it's a bit of a funny story in and of itself. It does again revolve around Dave Holder,
Yeah.
who won the Brick Factor and was working there full-time when I applied to the LEGOland.
Yeah.
I just called up the GM after and said, I'm still keen, I'm at uni.
Yeah.
Do you have anything open on the weekends? So I essentially just became the second master
Like
model
the
builder.
weekend master
The
builder?
weekend one. And Dave and I would overlap a bit on some projects, but it just meant that, you know, I was still involved in learning that side.
Yeah.
I ended up leaving to help start, like, run a business with an old boss of mine.
Yeah.
And I was finding that doing it professionally with uni and everything, I was starting to, I think maybe just get a little burned out.
Yeah.
You know, when your monetary income and you're already working short hours because you're at uni solely revolves around Lego, I think I was struggling to do it all. And it was good to take a step back. And since I've finished my university, I'm working. And then I have now entered the Bricker team, which, again, was with Dave. They took Dave on. He started developing some of their models into more efficient and better details.
Dave is a talented builder, but I don't think he would be able to do it without you.
It's teamwork. You know, I don't think I could do half the stuff I do without the input as well.
Yeah.
I think you get tunnel vision sometimes looking at a project and you might not see things. Having a team means we can work on a model, handball it off to someone else, and they're not going to destroy it. They're just going to improve. And the Iron Man helmet's a big example of that. I took the original file about halfway.
Yep.
I did the eyes, I did the ears, and I put in a few details. And then Dave and Chris really put in the fine details like the sloping and making sure the bricks were efficient.
Yeah.
But that was just passing it on one stage to the next to get a final product.
Wow, man. So with Brickbuilds, obviously, I think his name's Ryan. Is that right? Is that his name? The guy who owns Brickbuilds?
Christopher.
Ryan, randomly.
Yes.
With Chris, he's like the head, and you guys all design collab together. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's a fairly expansive crew.
Yeah.
I'm used to in some of the work I've done with Brick Vault doing everything myself in the sense of design instructions, and then they take, you know, they're doing their marketing and videos. With Bricker, we have a little bit more broken apart. So Christopher runs the entire company, but he does also do a lot of the Bricker exports, which are like the shells we use for bigger models.
Yeah, cool.
To get a general sense of shape.
Yeah.
And then Dave and myself are realistically the primary model designers. There are some other tertiary ones we've been working in, and a few which we've been finding mock builders out there and going, we love your work, we'd love to release some of your stuff. Like Ian Summers was one recently who did the Polaroid camera.
He's a good dude.
Oh yeah, and Tyler who did the Stag and a few other builds as well. Dave and I are probably the ones that do the biggest stuff, but it's all teamwork. And then we have a great crew for instructions with like Jace and some others, and there's a product coordinator, James, as well. Like,
wow, cool, man.
It takes a village to make this happen.
Yeah. So how have you found the transition from working at LEGOland to working on Brickbuilds and now basically designing stuff for them and lightsabers and all these cool things?
It's a fascinating transition in terms of, I think, well, skill and workflow. So LEGOland style was like you get a brief, but no one has any concept of how to build Lego. That's why you're there. When we're in these teams, we're a group of fans and we're building stuff for the fans. And I think the transition's been more in the sense of the approach. So I find it's a lot more collaborative because everyone in the process loves Lego. You know, Christopher loves Lego.
Yeah.
And everyone in the team has a passion for it. So we don't have a disconnect between potentially like a management.
Yeah.
I think we're a team who want to make stuff that
I think
people
that's better,
want
and
to
that's
build.
the key to your success. Like,
100%.
Brickbuilds is an amazing company that's doing big, massive models. Like, we have a few at the store. We have like nearly every Pokemon, but whatever, that's what it is. But I'm always looking forward to the next big thing you guys design because I'm like, do I need it?
I mean, that's the thing. Do we when it said, do we need it? There are some people out there who have almost every bricker model.
Seriously?
Yeah. Even like the Mario characters, or I guess the plumbers, as we call them. Someone has all of those models as soon as they come out. And it feels... It's like this, it's a strange feeling to think that you've made a model that someone's that passionate about building. It's quite a special feeling to make designs that people want to build. And I said, like, you know, this isn't something we did to be like, we're doing this solely because it's to make money. Bricker Builds is a business at the end of the day because there's so many people involved to make it work. Most of the cost is actually just the bricks themselves.
Yeah, that's the heavy, because you guys don't... So let's be clear, Bricker Builds is not associated with the LEGO Group.
No.
And it's not endorsed by the LEGO Group of companies.
No.
We need to make sure that's in there so no one gets in trouble.
Yeah. So we're not an officially endorsed company like some are. We are just fans doing the kind of builds that maybe LEGO would never do. There has been one instance of a complete overlap. Now there's been two. The second one was the Polaroid camera, where we released one, and then the next week they revealed it's going to be an idea set.
Yeah.
But there's still about 2 years of gap in there. And then the other one was actually the Thor hammer.
I was like, oh man.
We had a Thor hammer for 2 years, done by Dave.
A big
Great
heavy
model.
one. It's heavy too.
Yeah, it's a very weighty. It's got nice details through it. But then LEGO released a scale one as well.
Yeah.
That's been about the only time we've seen a complete overlap.
Do you think they got the idea from you guys?
I would like to think potentially. Based on how they did it, don't know if you've built it. It's very bare bones.
Yeah,
like
it is.
It's very hollow. Like they've clearly gone, we want a $200 budget.
Yeah.
And they've stretched that as far as they physically could. So I understand why it doesn't have all the prints. I think they wanted to make something because that realistically, they use a lot of these 6x6 panels.
Yeah.
And they are very expensive on the aftermarket.
They
were
crazy expensive.
You know, but they're able to use that and they can cut down the piece cost. So
and then they can cut down their cost because they can just turn on the machine and make a piece.
So realistically, their hammer's half the cost of ours because they were able to optimize the pieces.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that maybe they thought the idea. A lot of the LEGO stuff, as you know, is at least 1 to 2 years in development. But I think we're seeing like even something like the Black Panther bust. One of our biggest model drivers is life-size helmets and busts.
Yeah, dude, they're huge. You got some really nice models.
And they're a lot of work. My first one was the Master Chief from Halo.
Wow.
That I learned a lot. I learned like don't put weathering in the model before you've chosen the bricks because then you have to build around it. So when I did Boba Fett, I did the opposite. Basically built the whole thing in basic colors and then added stuff in.
I don't have any of the helmets, but now I've seen them on display. I'm like, oh my god, like because they are amazing.
And I appreciate it. It's tough to get the shapes right. Like Boba, my partner has to laughed at me because when I built it, I'd only done it digitally. I ordered the parts and I sat in bed with it for like 2 days, just staring at it. And I'm like, it's not right. Like the shaping's wrong. Something about this isn't right. And it was a couple of days and I'm like, it's ready to release. They were basically ready to say it's good. And I'm like, it's not right. The proportions are wrong. I haven't done this right. Went back to the drawing board, redid a bunch of the work, and we got to where we're at. And I'm really happy because we got photographs done with cosplayers. Yeah. And when they hold that next to their helmet and the shaping match.
It looks pretty much, if it was in brick form, it'd look nearly identical.
And that's what we love. That's what we try and do. And it's hard.
It's incredibly hard because you're building with a brick. It's not round. Like Lego's not designed to be round.
No. And I think you can get round and it holds on by a hair. You know, getting stuff that looks beautifully smooth, it tends not to be stable. So we've gone for, I think, a mix of both. We do a lot of traditional brick building and then amplify the designs with extra small details. Like Chief is a great example, like his mouthpiece. The original design is staggered in for bricks. I made an entire piece that sits at a slight angle.
I'm surprised, like, this is a dirty word, but Mega Bloks hasn't, like, said, hey, do you want to help us design them? Because they would sell.
Yeah, it's interesting that they haven't, but I think with something like the bigger models we do, it is a niche of a niche.
It is.
You know, they are costly models. There's no getting around it, which is why we have a range. Like we work on smaller stuff, but we're doing these big ones for the super fans.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these fans, they've got your big, your hot toys, your life-size helmets. We're doing it for that audience.
Got a lot of disposable income as well, so they can afford it.
Ideally, I mean,
it's not like a kid being like, oh, I want $1,000 head. Like,
no, and that's it as well. Like as I mentioned, most of the cost is just the bricks themselves. Like I think between 70 to 80% of the cost of the model.
Wow.
That is just.
And you think that's a lot? People don't realize that unless you're dealing with Lego directly, getting bulk brick is incredibly hard.
Yeah. And that's why we partnered with a brickling store in Canada called Canada
cool.
First Bricks.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah.
And they do all of the packing for everything. And they've even started moving to numbered bags.
Yeah, so when we got the Charmander, it was like numbered.
Yeah.
And then same with Eevee, I think. Like, there's been a few that we've had that's been numbered, some not so much, and you're like...
Well, I'm not involved in the instruction design.
Yeah.
We tend to handball that on. So I didn't know that this was happening until I saw people posting about it. I mean, I'm sure it was announced. I probably dismissed it. But that just leans into wanting to make an authentic experience. Like, when I'm designing these models, I want them to be fun to build. That's a really
you don't want it to be
part.
like...
It's
like Lego do some great models, but the Millennium Falcon, that's a hard model. Like, that's hard going.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no progress. You're like building and building and building. But at least with your models, you start building, you can see the legs.
Yes.
And you're seeing Charmander's tail and his little flame, like it's all coming together.
Yeah, and that experience as well comes down to, is it nice to put together? Because when you're designing models, there's so much more. I know, I didn't even think about it. You've got the model itself, but you've got, is it a nice building experience? Is it frustrating to put together? Considering like we've got some cases where we have sundry bricks that just prop up the model.
Yeah.
Like Master Chief's a good example on Iron Man where they slope up. So we have to, you know, I think some Lego sets have done it. Top of my head's like the Ferrari F40 that has some green plates that help you stabilize. But it's that concept where without it, you might push on it and the whole thing breaks.
Well, and I've noticed they're solid. Like, they're actually solid models. They're not like falling apart models. When you build them, you're like, oh, you can actually pick him up without him breaking.
Yeah, ideally. And, and you know, that's a big part of what we're doing.
That's the plan, right?
And the lightsabers are a massive, like, for me, that is a big part of their design.
I don't have any, but now I feel like I need them after seeing the display.
Well, I've done 77 now, including bladed and non.
77, wow.
It's I counted. A kid counted the other day for me as well. He confirmed it, so that's nice.
Yeah.
But 60 unique hilts from across movies and media. A lot of the smaller ones with just the handles, they're detail oriented, but there's no way that they can hold a blade. They're not designed to be held. When I started working on these bricker versions, I wanted versions that people could hold, and you're not going to be able to battle with them.
No.
But you don't want someone to have to be tentative either. And
you want them to be able to pick them up without, like, because no one understands when you're building something that's like, you're going to get flex.
Yes. And so the lightsabers are flexy in the non-camera friendly side.
Yeah.
And that's been something I got a bit of criticism for when I started from the design community.
Really?
Because my lightsabers have a camera friendly side.
Yeah, yeah.
Of why aren't they built circular? Why don't you use circle bricks? Why aren't they solid colors?
Yeah.
Lightsabers aren't solid colors. They're white in the center with a glow. So mine are white in the center and plates on the outside. And it has two reasons. One, that is really strong in the camera-friendly
You see them, because you see kids pick them up now. You're like, you want to hold it? And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah, and I pick it up from the end of the blade.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. There's no issues. But then because of that, I think the occasional times I've had somebody go, I just don't like the effect. They pull out their camera and they go, oh, I get it.
Yeah, because as soon as you take the photo, right? Like,
the effect is there. It's got that camera-friendly side. It's a bright white center and a very colored out edge. And you know, another, I guess, criticism, which I think is also valid, is that the edges are solid. They're not transparent.
Yeah.
But the solid color, when you take that photo, it pops. It looks nice. It looks like a glowing saber.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, you know, we design these models for fans. I love having these conventions and getting them into people's hands and just seeing like the kids' face light up and the adults even.
They're so accurate. Like when you look at them, you're like, and because Lego, sometimes when you build things out of Lego, it doesn't look the greatest.
Yeah, sometimes,
you know.
Yes.
And then like when you look at your wall and you built, it's impressive. Like,
and like some of those ones, the bricker ones especially, I deliberately tried to make them exact length. Yeah. Someone had the Obi-Wan replica hilt before. One of the cosplayers held it up, and I was so happy that it actually lined up exactly.
Wow.
But a lot more research went into these. Because I'm not using 4x4 round bricks to make the core, I'm doing a snot construction. I can make it the one plate extra thick.
Yeah.
Because lightsabers aren't that skinny. They're a little bit fatter.
But you need it to be fatter so you can get the length.
Yes.
That sounded so wrong, but anyway.
Yeah, but that's it. It gives us the freedom to make a bunch of different designs. And there's compromises. You know, they're a little blockier. I can't get as fine details.
It's too hard, man. You're building something that's meant to be round.
Yeah. But I'm pretty happy. I think as well, when you get them all together, those minor details fade a little bit. You know, if you got one, someone might be critical and go, oh, well, it's a little simpler than the hilt-only version. You stack a few in the same style, it starts making sense.
Yeah.
And I think the same with the other models like Dave's Nintendo ones.
Yeah.
By itself, you might go, oh, it's a little blocky. But then you add it to
When
the
you add it
collection,
and you see his display here as well, you're just like, dude. Like, and it's so amazing. It's impressive.
Like, we were really excited to see Luigi.
Yeah.
Like,
that's the one I don't have yet. He's like, you should buy a Luigi. I'm like, I'll get to it. Like,
we didn't have it either.
Oh, really?
But someone in the community in Australia had built it already.
Wow.
So,
and you're like, can we borrow it?
Yeah, he was happy to donate it because we just didn't get the parts in time. But amazing that somebody else in the community had a Luigi that they were willing to borrow. I'm sorry, I don't know who it is to shout them out. But really appreciate that they were able to do that.
Well, I'm sure
if we can
later
find out,
someone will be like, hey, and I'm like, yeah, and I'll add their little social media, because everything with Lego is social media.
Oh, yeah. And I think, like, you know, I'm big on Instagram. That's really what I've moved to.
Yeah. Instagram's big. If you can crack it on Instagram and TikTok, you're doing well. Facebook, not so much anymore, because Facebook's like ad central now.
Yes.
You get on, it's just ads crazy everywhere.
I've never been able to be particularly good at TikTok, but I find it interesting that I'll tend to just if I do a video, which isn't that common, I only really do it if I think of an idea. I try not to just force myself to do videos, mostly because I prefer photos.
Yeah.
And I'm not as good at video editing. It's fascinating to see sometimes the same video perform completely differently on either platform.
Dude, it's crazy. We got a video that's like 800,000 views. It makes no sense to me.
And I've got like a couple of my reels have 500,000 views.
That's what I mean.
And
like,
the same one on TikTok will get 1,000.
And you're just like, the data doesn't make sense. There's no logical behind it.
No. And but it's fascinating sometimes to see what sticks. You know, we like to share the builds, and I love seeing what people do. Like, even coming to these conventions, I like doing the kind of building that I do, but I can't do what everyone else here is doing.
Yeah.
You know, we all are
some of the
good
stuff
at
is
what
crazy. Look at the big Star Wars ship. My God.
Yeah, like never. I mean, I even look like, you know, Joss, his character builds.
There's the reason why he won.
There is, as soon as I found out it's like, he's going to be in it, cool, and then he's going to win it.
Lego Masters do this unique editing style where they tell you who's going to win on like the first episode, because they do like the reel for it and you're like, oh, there's his arm. Like, you know straight away.
Even just knowing Joss, I'm like, yeah, he's going to win. But those character builds are so detailed, and like the connections, I'm looking at it trying to figure out how they go together. And then you've got some other beautiful stuff around, like even the train layouts and things. Like, how do you plan this? Like, even just
it's just crazy. You see the train layout, how big it is? It's like
enormous.
Have you felt the reception here has been really good towards what you've built and put on display?
100%. We get put, I jokingly say we get put in the naughty corner because we let people touch. And
they don't want anyone else is getting damaged.
Most of these conventions, no touch.
Yeah.
So if we were at the front and we're
saying, were you meant to be up there?
No, but if we were, they say, well, if we say that you can touch, they're going to want to touch everything. So we kind of get put a bit towards the back so that by the time everyone's come through, they're not going to then run around and grab everything else.
But that's nice because, you know, usually at any Lego event, and that's probably a secret to Ryan's as well, you're allowed to touch his stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what kids like, to tactile. They want to touch. They want to hold lightsabers.
Oh, yeah.
They want to look at the helmets up close.
Yeah, 100%. And like those sabers, I've made them to be handled. So let's get them handled. Like, get them out there. And I have the feeling of like, you think if I was that young and I saw that, I really want to hold it. I like the idea that we can give people a memory and an experience.
It's nice. It's really nice. It's special for the kids.
Yeah, and like
they're going to be like, remember I saw that guy and now I want to build lightsabers.
And it's not like for us to be like, hey, great, look at how good this is.
Yeah.
I just love to be able to, it's like giving back in a sense of like, you know, if you can give a memory, they have this photo or video with the family and they love it. They light up. They're really happy. It adds something to the experience. And I think it makes me feel like I'm contributing, not just in a build, but, you know, making people's experience really worthwhile. Like, these shows are absolutely fantastic. And if we can make them more interactive, I think you'll get more interest in people wanting to try new things. And like, it's like Billsy over there with his playable DJ decks.
So good.
You know, it's so cool.
Don't give Billsy too much credit.
Or like Fleur's Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, it's so good.
Sit down at the table and chairs and grab the knife and fork and build a plate. You know, that kind of interaction. It's very rare, and I think we're seeing more of it.
We are. I've noticed a lot more that, you know, in the last 10 years or whatever, the community's grown so big because you're getting all these new people who are excited. And people like me, I've been around like 15 years, so it's like this big change going from a small venue to a massive venue and then seeing like massive things. Like, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I think this year, it's by far the biggest in terms of exhibitors, I believe, or at least it's close.
I know they were considering at one stage putting them upstairs as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I remember him saying, Peebles might have been saying that they had access to it potentially
Yeah, if they wanted to,
needed it.
But, you know, they have to pay more for that because
Yes.
that's how it is, right?
But I mean, at this point, we've got nowhere else to go. We've hit the point where we can't even have the food inside. It's got to be outside because all of the floor space, it's all Lego. So
Yeah,
where
it's
do we
crazy.
go? We either go upstairs or they got to find
I think,
a bigger
you know,
spot.
it's nice to have a big event after COVID, like, and be back and seeing
Oh.
people and, like, greeting people and being like, hey,
Yeah.
man, like, because the last couple of years has
Yeah.
been nothing.
And I think the MSAC event they did last year was a fantastic effort,
Yeah.
but it's limited by the restrictions of the time.
And
Like,
where it was,
really
too, was in a weird space, not
Yeah.
central.
And, you know, the crew did as best they could.
Shout out Brickvention,
you know?
they did a great job.
They did absolutely everything they could to make that event as good as it can be. But coming back here, it's a grand venue. It feels special.
It's such a
being
nice
back
venue.
here.
I haven't been back to Brickvention. We used to sell here, obviously. Now we've got a store that's incredibly busy, so we don't have the time.
Well, that's what you mentioned. Where we met
Yeah.
was a Brickvention about 6 years
I
ago.
want to say 6 or 7 years ago. I think you were over in this corner with the
Yeah.
LEGOland stuff.
It was the first year of the LEGOland.
Yeah.
And we had this tiny table still being established. So like that and a pull-up banner in a corner. You know, my first experience ever coming to one of these.
Yeah.
I'd never exhibit. And then after I moved on from LEGOland, I didn't exhibit anywhere.
For a long time.
And last year was my first.
Wow.
But one of the things I find really fascinating about these shows, people who know your work and don't know you.
It's crazy because I'll see it on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah. And they'll be like talking to you and they're like, I follow you already.
Yeah.
And I've had some people come up and it's lovely. It's amazing when they come up and like, I've been following you for a couple of years now. Love what you're doing. It's amazing. It feels great.
Such a great feeling when people come
Yeah.
up and like, hey, I know you. It's like, I was just talking to Fleur about it. It's a poor famous person.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any of the money that comes with it, but people recognize your work.
Yeah. And it's had the other side a little bit funny I've had to chuckle at. I've had people come up and be oddly accusing and say, you stole those designs. I'm like, from where? From
so
Built
funny.
Bricks. Yeah,
Is
you
it-
stole them from Built Bricks. And I go,
It's me. Look at my shirt.
Yeah. And I think it's just that no one expects you're
Did
Australian.
they do that? Like,
They had the click, but you know, Bricker Builds is an American company.
Yeah.
Dave and I, I'd say the primary designers, were Australian. No one expects that we're Aussie. And that's that click, or even I've said to people, they're talking about custom builds. I'm like, oh, do you follow Brickvault? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the Saber guy. And it just twigs.
yeah.
I'm like, oh, I've seen all your stuff before, and that's why it's familiar. And someone even the other day, they saw my display through Facebook, funnily
Yeah,
enough,
yeah.
where I put it up. I'm like, yep, I remember seeing this floating through. But that's always fantastic. Like, if you meet people who, you know, they share the passion. And I think it's nice to have somebody.
It's really, really nice.
It's a nice feeling. And, you know, we're not, no one's a particular celebrity in this
Yeah.
at all. You know, I haven't been on the show. I just build
Well,
outside of
maybe
that.
one day.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one
We'll
day.
see.
All right, Lewis, thanks for joining us. Dan gave me the,
Yeah,
you're
no
talking
sweat.
too much, Rick. He's like,
No,
big thank you
fantastic.
for joining us here at Brickvention 2023.
Yeah, no worries.
I appreciate it that we could do a podcast because, you know, everyone lives in all weird sorts of places.
Yes.
Keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate it. I'll put all the links for Lewis's stuff, Bricker Builds, all that stuff, our discount code for Bricker Builds, all that stuff. But yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me on.
Easy done.